Hello, everyone. This is Kate Stillman with the Yoga Healer podcast. On today's episode, we talk about functional medicine with Tracy Harrison, who founded the School of Applied Functional Medicine. She has 3 degrees from MIT in graduate education at Bridgeport University and the Institute of Functional Medicine. She also holds a certificate in health coaching from the Institute of Integrative Nutrition. And what I love about what Tracy's done in the world is she, at the School of Applied Functional Medicine, is helping practitioners build both their case study experience and also their coaching experience, and helping people with complicated health problems move to solutions much faster. So in today's episode, we talk about coaching versus practitionership. We talk about where does inspiration and education fit into empowerment for wellness leaders. And we talk about how to help people that are, in the fast food world, in the fast-paced world, and living in a stress response, start to shift into a more enlightened way of living and being in their body. We also talk about immunity, autoimmunity, allergies, the COVID fear, and everything that your nervous system has to do with your immune system from a big picture perspective. We also get into what does a regional immune system look like at the end. That's my favorite part of the conversation, and where I really sense where community medicine should be headed. So here we go. And my first question, Tracy Harrison, welcome to the Yoga Healer podcast. So my first question is, what brought you into the field of functional medicine as a scientist?
I started a school to add to the field of functional medicine education what was completely unavailable, which is that the rigorous science, yes, and I love that, and we teach that, but also that devil in the detail know-how and lots of case practice. So I put it out there, and, the coaching, I think, is transforming healthcare because more and more people are getting galvanized and inspired about the impact of lifestyle on health. Especially in this day and age, making healthy choices is not the cultural norm at all. And so, I love Pilar Gerasimo's book, The Healthy Deviant, because it's a good reminder that you have to be willing to be abnormal to be healthy. And that's not our normal way of being. I mean, we're social creatures. From an evolutionary viewpoint, there's safety in numbers, just hang with the crowd. And people need support to make abnormal choices to have amazingly abnormal health results. And so coaching, I think, is huge for that, because it's about educating people, inspiring them, empowering them, and providing accountability. And I really believe that the healthcare model of the future is multimodality, and coaching is an asset to any and all modalities. We're not a coaching school. We're a functional medicine school, but we certainly teach the power of coaching to all modalities. In fact, I love it when nurse practitioners and physicians and nutritionists and so many other traditional medical modalities add some coaching skills to their professional arsenal, because it makes all the difference in the world.
Yeah. Yeah. With, coming from a background of teaching people the daily habits of Ayurveda, we always talk about how it's radical, how it's counterculture, how your habits are not your own. And so how, often people know what to do. What I found in, even in my training and practice as an Ayurvedic practitioner, was that we were really taught to tell people what to do, but we really were not prepared to guide people into actually doing it. Like, how do you really get skin in the game? How do you really get buy-in? How do you get people to actually follow through on what they want when it is counterculture to their core relationships? Because their core relationships are often emphasizing exactly what they're currently doing, which is not currently working for them, right? And
Absolutely.
so I'd love to hear how do you guys over at the School of at the School of Applied Functional Medicine, how do you guys deal with that, like compliance and buy-in? And one of the things I'm really curious about, because in the holistic medical model, what I see so much of is we leave it up to the client or the patient to make the appointment or make the phone call, and it's kind of this piecemeal investment in their end result. And in yoga health coaching, we do the opposite. We get them to invest in the long term up front and get that commitment
up front, so that then there's a dynamic group that enables them to really follow through on what they wanted and have the support for when it gets hard. Because often when it gets hard for people, when the changes they're trying to make, whether it's around sleep, whether it's around diet, whether it's around exercise, like when those changes get hard, we often find that the tendency is for people to actually withdraw from the support and the guidance that they need, right? Because they're not feeling as good. They're not as confident in their own ability. They show up often with shame, like so they want to hide. So I'm really curious at how in your school you work with that.
That's a great question. So two things come to mind that I feel really strongly about. The first one is, to your point, it's not effective to counter sort of authoritative paternalistic medicine with the loosey-goosey, hey, whatever, because the reasons people have the health that they do or lack thereof are going to keep them stuck in that space, as you well said. And so I believe that there is a still space in the middle of those two extremes where the practitioner needs to understand that ultimately the only way a person's going to get well and stay well is by changing their life. You know, I like to say chronic lifestyle diseases require a change in your chronic lifestyle. And so to that extent, getting real serious with practitioners about it, doesn't matter how fancy or erudite their education is. If they can't use it to help someone change their life eventually, then we're just creating the revolving door of disease, where it's just, another day, another diagnosis. And so education, inspiration, and empowerment, I think, are the three most important skills that any practitioner brings to any patient or client ever. But on the other side, I think people are coming to us because they're looking for leadership. If they were looking to just be left to their own devices, they'll just stay on social media and keep, struggling or perpetuating where they are. And so I think education is critically important because superficial knowledge of what might help people to get well doesn't change lives. Otherwise, we wouldn't have disease epidemics because there's plenty of saccharine articles written about what you can do to be healthier. But people need to really be taught, and getting away from the highfalutin scientific language. People need to be taught with simple analogies and stories what's actually going on in their body and how what they're doing is perpetuating it. So on a grassroots level, they get it. Because when people get galvanized with understanding about something that used to be so complicated, they're on fire. They tell everyone they know. And every time they tell it, they anchor it in themselves. Mm-hmm. And so by becoming sort of an informal messenger or teacher or guide for others, they actually galvanize their commitment to their own health journey. So I think education is super important, but education delivered in a way that people can understand and that's really memorable. The other thing that I think is critical about the leadership from the practitioner, we talk at SAFM about balancing rapid relief with root cause resolution. So I think there's way too much functional medicine that's taught in the vein of just fix the symptoms, right? Or replace drugs with a supplement or this type of thing, right? Yeah. Which is, just the top 10%, right, of low-hanging fruit. But I do think rapid relief is hugely important because if you don't do something fairly early on in the therapeutic relationship to galvanize people's belief in you as a practitioner and also galvanize their own belief in their ability to get well, their ability to feel notably better, they stay on the fence as it's a possibility. But if we can address some particularly debilitating or frustrating aspect of their day-to-day experience, then there's proof, there's evidence, there's a physical experience that I also find lifts them up and galvanizes them on what's possible working with you because you have some expertise that's actually been demonstrated, but also what's possible for them as a real live person. I think a lot of people hear about case examples of amazing improvement. And there's always that sense of, well, I'm different. Well, my case is harder. Well, that works for them, but it won't work for me. You did it, but it's too hard for me. And I think we have to get in front of those things because that self-talk will derail people every single time.
Yeah. Well, in the enlightenment studies I've done, that's an ego strategy. It's a subconscious ego strategy. Like, I'm different, I'm special, I'm unique. My disease is different, special, unique. And it's that what you're saying, that identification with that, when people can, I mean, it often takes someone that is meditating to be able to identify that kind of pattern, be able to receive that kind of feedback from a guide or a teacher. And you're like, that's what that is. That's what's actually creating that fixed mindset. In Carol Dweck language, right? And it's not actually enabling me to see. I mean, this is a big focus that we have in yoga health coaching, is like, everyone, according to Ayurveda, everyone needs the same habits. Everyone needs to eat dinner a little earlier and lighter so they can go to bed and sleep a little deeper, go to bed a little earlier, wake up before the dawn, hydrate, poop, open their mind to a bigger perspective, move their breath body to create coordinated, aligned pranic flow throughout the whole organism. So the whole organism of you is coordinated and awake to the day. Like, everyone needs these habits, meal spacing, or what's now intermittent fasting, which I call rhythmic eating, like just eating in a rhythm that allows for rest and digest, having time in silence.
Yep. And
even the daily, so fascinating, like self-soothing through self-massage is a daily practice in Ayurveda. Like, there's no one that doesn't help. I mean, look at your dog, right? Like, dogs lick themselves, right? Like, self-soothing is a very basic mammalian habit. It's done daily, and it's like no one is an exception to this. Like, no one gets a way out. No one gets a hall pass. Yep. On the habits. So looking first at what do we actually have in common?
Yeah.
And then which of the habits is actually, are we missing the mark? Is there a sin? Are we in violation of nature's law? Like, where are we going against the bigger intelligence of the cosmos that created us? And if we can just look at that wholeness, we actually shift our mindset from fixed into like, I'm so special, my disease is so special, I'm so different, this won't work for me, into like, oh, there's actually something I can do right now.
Yeah, for sure. And again, it's just my experience that people have to have often some kind of a breakthrough, even if it's not their primary disease process or their primary complaint, but something that awakens them to what's possible. The other thing that I think is really critical about what you said is getting people from where they are to you and I could sit here and probably talk about our personal daily habits, and it might be yours is green and mine's blue, but it's going to be the same similar priorities and progression. But getting people from where they are into that space, a lot of the magic in my experience, Kate, is a really diverse toolbox. Mm-hmm. Because getting people to start with something that feels achievable, attainable, possible, practical in their life to transcend the 72 reasons they have for why it won't work for them is so important. And I want to go back to real quickly to one thing that you said earlier about the word compliance. I'd like to get the word compliance out of healthcare, out of medicine, because it's about people feeling beholden to following some rules or guidance from some third-party authority. Which, if you are almost dying, if you're in an emergency or acute kind of situation that needs triage and stabilization, then that's fantastic. That allopathic model is awesome. Very practitioner-centric. Single remedy, quick, just arrest the badness, right? But again, people will be compliant as long as they're afraid. Mm-hmm. And then once they move to a place where they're not so afraid anymore, they're not really healthy either, they're just fine. We have a whole population of people who are stuck in that fine space where there's a massive loss of vitality, but there's not real, what I would call resilient health, because it's not something people, again, are educated, inspired, and empowered to go get themselves because they want it and they know how and they love it and it feels great. And so a key practitioner skill, I think, is having that diverse toolbox, because if you take someone who's eating at McDonald's every day and your solution is, oh my gosh, you just need to go home and make, I don't know, salmon and broccoli and asparagus. Here's a recipe.
Yeah.
That's not going to work ever. And how do you begin with the person who's eating at McDonald's? And maybe we can get them out of McDonald's and into TGI Fridays, where at least they have a sides menu and there's a remote possibility of a nutrient-dense vegetable on the menu.
Yeah.
And beginning, right, step by step by step by step. And before they know it, they're jogging. And just leading people down the unique, twisty, windy paths that can get them to a place where they can see and honor that basket of connection with nature that you're talking about.
Yeah. In yoga health coaching, we do a lot around behavioral science and Kaizen or the 2-minute rule or tiny habits. And what does 1% improvement look like over time? And I love the 2-minute rule. Like if you can't do something in 2 minutes, you probably won't do it. Like if you can't take a habit that you currently have. And and it does, it's interesting because there are people that can do these great leaps forward. And then there's like everyone else that really needs these, and it often can, I find with the same person, just be at a different phase that they're in, whether they're ready for big changes or whether they really just need these little 1% improvements. The other thing that I really find is and I'm talking about this more and more, I'm curious about your perspective on it, is rather than changing people's diets, just change when they're eating. Like just go to meal spacing or intermittent fasting. Just change when they eat so they have more time to digest so that they could possibly get into autophagy. And instead of focusing on changing what they're eating, which I find in Ayurveda, being a practitioner for 20 years, people are like, what should I eat? And it's like, well, there's an obsession in specialized diets in the West. It's like, what's special for me? Like, what do I need in doing the blood type diet or doing this or that or the other type diets, right? There's been all this focus on what I need for me. And, with food allergies and food intolerances and all that. In Ayurveda, we look at what's going on with Agni. What's going on with the digestive fire? And Agni is a complex concept, but it's simplified into the digestive fire. On a more complex level, it's the fires in every cell of the body, and it's the fire in the cell membrane, right? And so, but the Jatara Agni, the main Agni, is the mass coordinator of all that. So if our digestive fire isn't strong, focusing on a specialized diet doesn't really matter. However, just allowing often more time between meals, getting someone off snacking, getting them to eat an earlier, lighter dinner. So when they wake up the next morning, they've had their digestive tract's had a little bit of a break in order to start to, digest more on a cellular level, the stuff that hasn't yet been digested, what we call ama. And just going there, I find we can get massive progress. And then internally an intelligence arises to, I actually want more of that, whether it's high quality fats or good vegetables or high quality protein or et cetera. So I'm curious on your take on that.
It's a great point. And as usual, I would say it depends on what the state of illness is for the given individual, right? So if they're eating standard American diet, lots and lots of refined carbohydrates, a lot of blood sugar highs and lows, where they feel like, and especially interestingly enough, not so much the one we focus on, which is the more extreme stages of metabolic dysfunction where there's elevated blood sugar, but more those moderate stages where people are highly prone to hypoglycemia. Yeah. And the notion of waiting a long time in between meals feels frightening to them. And where they don't have enough blood sugar stability in order to go there. And so I'm in total agreement with you, if you will, eventually, but sometimes depending on where people are with regard to just normal metabolic function, they need some support of how to get to a place of stability where they're not in danger of passing out because they didn't eat, or it makes them emotionally fragile or shaky, and so they don't feel like they can function at work and these kinds of things.
Yeah,
totally agree. That there's a hyper focus sometimes on what to eat, sort of to the dismissal of everything else. Mm-hmm. And it turns into, I don't know, it's almost like an expression of personality. Like, well, my nitpick diet is different from yours in these 13 ways. And to your point, a good, strong digestive fire, a good, strong system of coordination across all of the organs will deal with all sorts of variety and abnormality. And that's that resiliency that I think most people want to have. But just specifically in the world of food, I do think that metabolic dysfunction and can cause people sometimes to need to shift just the quality of their diet in order to be eating a bit more just real food. And then to your point, I think it matters less, especially in the short to midterm, what they're eating as much as they're eating real food, as opposed to a whole bunch of refined carbohydrates and chemicals.
Yeah. So I'm curious too, in your school with your practitioners, how much are they, like, how much do you find your practitioners are serving people that are really on that fast food diet versus those that are shopping at Whole Foods? Because what I've noticed is like people who are already seeing or into functional medicine, like they're usually more in that affluent category.
Well, I'll draw a distinction between sort of socioeconomic status and how ill people are. Because there are a lot of people who are extremely wealthy who still don't have an answer. And they've been to, all of the famous expensive allopathic entrepreneurial physicians, and they're taking 7 drugs, but they still have 3 autoimmune diseases. And they need a completely different approach. So I would say in our student body, we have practitioners that are typically engaging with people who are quite unwell. And they are usually entering with multiple medications that are providing some level of stabilization of disease process on the surface. But it's, as we know, with long-term medication use, I mean, drugs can be a blessing for stabilization, but they almost always end up exacerbating the disease process they were originally prescribed to counter, or causing a completely different secondary disease dynamic. So there's definitely people who are suffering, not so much people who are having a suboptimal life experience who are looking to continuously improve it, but more people who are really suffering. And in some cases, they've been told diet doesn't matter at all. God, I can't tell you how many people have been told. With
my dad, who's had cancer 3 times.
Multi-autoimmune disease, chronic asthma. No, they said diet doesn't matter. I mean, it's crazy to me. People who have I encountered this just a couple of weeks ago. A woman had her gallbladder removed. And she was basically told to take it easy for a couple of days, and then her appetite was probably going to be low. So just eat anything, eat whatever, was remotely appealing, quote unquote, like pizza. And I was like, you just can't make this stuff up. Seriously? Like pizza with no gallbladder? For real? I mean, it just floors me. We laugh all the time about how you don't have to make up gross examples of disconnect in conventional guidance, because real life truths are way more extreme and alarming than probably the things that we would make up. So I do find that while every practice is diverse, and we have everything from people who are in allopathic practice now who are looking to infiltrate that with functional medicine principles, even under the constraints of managed care, which I think is awesome, to kind of integrative clinics, to entrepreneurial functional, to multimodality practices. So we have a huge diversity of types of practitioners and the business models that they're working in.
That's great. It's so great to hear.
I had allergies as a kid and as a teen and as a young adult. Through Ayurveda, I uprooted my allergies. Otherwise, I would have also had allergies through my adult life. My allergies were the horrible, super snotty, itchy eyes, puffy face variety. The doctors tested me and found me allergic to dust, to pollen, to cats, to dogs. Until I learned Ayurveda for allergy relief, I had no idea that there were underlying imbalances that were provoking my allergy attacks. The side effects from the medicine left me, medicated. Ayurveda understands the language of allergies, the root causes, and what allergies are trying to tell a person. For those allergic to your ecosystem or your pets, pause and think, why are you allergic to nature? Are you so out of the loop that your body recognizes local pollen as allergens? If you have pet allergies, do they get worse with certain seasons? While it might appear you are allergic to nature, chances are you're out of sync inside your body. My experience as an Ayurvedic practitioner and leader at yogahealer.com since 2000 is that out of sync bodies become reactive bodies when an internal tipping point is reached. This tipping point is often reached when seasons changed and internal imbalances have built up. What type of allergies do you have? Did you know that the underlying cause of allergies is unique to the individual, both their Ayurvedic constitution and their imbalance? This is how Ayurveda works with diseases and imbalances. What is the constitution, Prakruti, and what is the individual's imbalance, or reason they have allergies, Vikruti? Pharmaceuticals, on the other hand, work like a one-size-fits-all approach, and we all know that one-size-fits-all never really fits. Pharmaceuticals that are antihistamines never target the root problem. Allergy drugs have side effects. From a holistic perspective, the side effects aggravate the root problem. Yet, leave the allergies untreated and you suffer. What is the way out of this loop? Through symptoms, allergies reveal much of the Vikruti to the trained eye. The symptoms lead you back to the cause. If you know how to interpret your symptoms, you'll find the cause. In Ayurveda, either Vata, Pitta, Kapha, or Ama are usually involved. Sometimes multiple doshas plus Ama are at the root. Always come back to the question, why is my body reactive? And what if I could help my body become less reactive? Wisdom is power, and allergies are optional. Included in my all-new Allergy Relief with Ayurveda course is Part 1. What type of allergies do you have? Understand your symptoms and the doshas. Part 2. Allergies, Ama, deeper imbalances, and autoimmune disease. Part 3. Rewilding your gut, your lungs, and your skin. And Part 4. Allergy Relief, Vata, Pitta, and Kapha solutions. I hope you'll take a look at my new Allergy Relief with Ayurveda workshop, whether you have allergies or someone you take care of has allergies. If you want to help yourself or someone else, I know you're going to love it. It's at yogahealer.com/allergy-relief. And the good news is, as a podcast listener or a YouTube watcher, you get 65% off with this link. So yogahealer.com/allergy-relief, and you can get 65% off my new allergy relief workshop with Ayurveda. Cheers to an allergy-free existence. This is Kate Stillman with yogahealer.com.
I want to shift to talking about anxiety and COVID and the immune system. So in Ayurveda, right, we say that like the nervous system, which is really tied up in what we call the Manovvaha Shrota, which is in all cells, is really connected to the Pranavaha Shrota, which is this life force body, the breath body, right? And so if we want to feel good, which is at ease, really, right? It's not, there's like this feeling stressful and there's feeling easeful or full of ease. And there's, it's a pretty high bar in Ayurveda. Like full of ease is pretty much connected to bliss, which is the pulsating vibration of the universe. And it's like that's you. So if you're at home in yourself, because you've attuned your habits to the rhythms of nature so that you're naturally like infiltrated, your whole body is just in sync with this pulsation of ease, then when stressful things happen outside of yourself, like a pandemic, at home, you're actually in ease. So you're going to be less reactive to that. Whereas if you're not, like the opposite of that is if internally you're not organized, that you're not in this pulsating vibration of the cosmos, but you're actually disorganized and disconnected. We might see that in someone's physiology by shallow breathing or with constipation or with even just an inner feeling of not being grounded or not being at home in themselves. Then if something happens outside of the self, that's negative or perceived as negative, there's a reaction to that actually weakens the immune system. So I'd love to hear, and so with COVID, right, in our community, our course members that were in the habits course, Body Thrive, they did great, because they know the practices and the habits they can do to self-soothe and create a higher vibrational field within themselves and be less affected by the things outside themselves. And they also were able to notice what to tune into and maybe what not to tune into in terms of their attention, in order kind of to build their more inner field of resilience, and be less affected by, we'll say, the news, for instance. So I'm curious, on your perspective of all this and how you're guiding your practitioners.
And I'll have to say ahead of time, just interrupt me because I could talk about this forever. Because it's fascinating to have seen played out in just the past few months in all sorts of different case examples. To your point, just the fundamental truth that stress impairs immune function, especially in addressing microbial threats. But it does it on purpose. I think it's such a powerful opportunity to reinforce, and I've been encouraging practitioners to teach about the difference between a sympathetic dominant nervous system mode and a parasympathetic dominant nervous system mode. And that when your body is convinced, regardless of what you tell yourself, but when your body is convinced based on your behaviors, your thoughts, we'll come back to that in a second, that your survival is not assured, it purposefully prioritizes a very specific set of neural transmissions, glandular secretions, muscle contractions, and an endocrine balance to promote survival, right? It's about fighting and flighting and hiding. Fighting and flighting and hiding. And the reason we're sitting here having this conversation is that our particular genes are really good at doing that, right? We manage to outlast famines and marauders and threats and wars and all these things. So we're really good at going into sympathetic dominant nervous system mode and protecting ourselves. But things that are associated with more the life experience people want to have, right? Great digestion, awesome sleep, high fertility, low body fat, great bowel movements, orgasms, nice skin, all of great moods, all these things. Those are not sympathetic nervous system experiences. They're parasympathetic nervous system experiences, and you cannot give the body sympathetic input and expect a parasympathetic output because it is not natural and it will not be allowed. And I think that's a truth that people have got to get their hand. You don't induce the body to make that okay. It's like saying, I want 1 + 1 = 5. It's just not. It's impossible. And so this whole notion of somehow I want to make all of these sympathetic choices because to your earlier comment, my ego's all caught up in it. Our whole culture's focused on it. Everyone I know and love is focused on it. I want to be able to go there, but I want to be having this super cool, relaxed experience. It goes counter to all the laws of nature. It will not be allowed because the body is not interested in you thriving at all until it is assured of your survival. And the body is eavesdropping on our thoughts incessantly. And so it doesn't even matter so much what you tell yourself or what you tell your friends and family. The body knows your real state of stress. And it is taking that as perhaps the most important cue about the status of your world. And if you have to fight, flight, and hide, the body is like, we don't have time to lay down and relax and sleep late and fight an infection. Why would I want to do that? I might get stabbed in a cave. So it impairs digestion. It impairs fertility. It impairs your immune system. It impairs detoxification. It does all of these things on purpose so that resources can be prioritized for other functions. And so if you want to be living in a sympathetic culture, you have to have a parasympathetic set of personal habits in light of that culture as an isolated experience in order to tell your body, I'm safe. I'd like to thrive. And the body says, yes, of course. And we got to get people galvanized around understanding, stop trying to manipulate that with drugs and chemicals and stimulants and everything. Oh my God, just follow the body's natural mechanisms. And then it becomes, to use your word, I love that word, easeful, right? Yeah. So I think it's super powerful because people have been exposing themselves to all sorts of fear mongering and really sensationalistic media that and the particular implications of the regulatory response to the current pandemic are really unprecedented in a lot of people's lives. And so they are allowing that. And I use the word allow. They are allowing that to freak them out. Mm-hmm. And it's something to ruminate about on an ongoing basis. And your body as a gift says, oh, okay, I got your back. You don't have to worry. We will survive. And it shifts and it's going to stay there. It's going to stay there until it is sure that the threat has passed. And so people don't know the late night television that, disrupts, all the blue light and the loud noise and the scary messages and disrupting the natural diurnal rhythm and dance of melatonin and cortisol becomes completely screwed. And so even if people are sleeping, they're sleeping very lightly with that mm-hmm. hair trigger response. Mm-hmm. Because again, if you are running for your life and hiding in a cave, that's a good thing. It would keep you from getting stabbed or eaten. But those choices matter, and taking back ownership of your choices and not being, whipped around like the gnat on the flea of the dog of the cultural meme at present. It's been a serious wake-up call for people. But I do think that powerful awareness and education. So we're teaching a lot about that in terms of, and you can get into all the biochemistry about, moderate chronic stress, promoting an imbalance in T helper cells in the immune system. And so you're more likely to get allergies and asthma, but less likely to fight an infection, whether it's SARS-CoV-2 or not, just the flu, strep, staph, anything, right? Not because the body is weak, but because the body is very strong and very resilient and very specific in its choices to promote survival. Yeah.
I mean, in yoga, in the Yoga Sutras of Patanjali, the first one is like, now yoga, now we're going to do yoga. Like that's Sutra 1. Like the second one is like, stop the fluctuations of your mind. Yeah. Right? The first 2 sutras in the book, in the old book, 2,000 years ago, or around then. Right? So it's like, there's presence first, like now be present to what's going on between your ears. Yeah. Right now, like notice, like you're either creating your own craziness or you're stopping it. Like you get to, you get, like you said, you get to choose, you have that choice. You're either allowing yourself to get swept up in a panic, or you're choosing ease. You're choosing not to. You're choosing to go lie on the ground for 10 minutes and feel the earth and let it absorb any negativity within you, and just get the grounding charge back.
Yeah, laying on the ground for 10 minutes would address a lot. Just everything: fresh air, microbes, spores, magnetics. I mean, all sorts of things.
All sorts of things.
But to your point around choosing, I think at this point, technology has become so embedded in our cultural norms. Mm. I'm not even sure people perceive it as a choice. Yeah, I mean, we've had that discussion of what would it be like if you got up and chose not to watch the news all day?
Yeah.
You can kind of watch people freak out. Like, it's kind of like not breathing. Like, why would I do that? Well, I don't, because it doesn't seem to be doing anything good for you at all. Yeah. But making a choice of what do you expose your body's wisdom to, because it is going to respond. And whether that is a lot of fear-mongering social media and Doritos, or whether it's time outside, distance on technology, time with loved ones, people have made radically different choices in how they spend this pandemic experience, right? So there's families who have put in gardens and they're eating food that they've grown for the first time ever in their adult lives. And they're playing board games as a family, and they're going for long walks, and they're spending more time with their pets, or they're getting a pet. They're learning to meditate. They're, actually getting engaged with some kind of life outside of the go and do and go and do and go and do mantra. Mm-hmm. And they're having a really different experience than people who have just gotten sucked into the badness vortex.
Yeah. And gain 20 pounds and
gain 20 pounds
are eating carbs and in that.
Behind the pandemic, every chronic lifestyle disease epidemic that we already had is worsening.
Oh no.
Because of that.
What a lost opportunity. But what I see is super cool in the industry is that there are people who are waking up to not only I can make a different choice, but I really believe, Kate, that we're starting to see people as they come out of the fear, and that starts to get into a space of maybe numb vulnerability. People are clearly seeing we both got the virus, right? And I got crazy sick, and it was really frightening, and you didn't. And why is that? And even the amount of publicity around the differences of the impact of comorbidity, the impact of drugs, for predisposing one to have an actual illness and getting away from, I mean, we could talk all day about the false sensationalism of, a virus with fangs is coming to attack you. I'm like, oh my God, a virus is like a little yarn ball of genetic material that's like floating by and your body is responding to it. It's just fascinating. But I think people are starting to glom onto maybe I could be doing something to make myself more resilient. Yeah. Because I think based on this second wave, people are starting to see this is not something that a vaccine is going to fix. I mean, viruses are ubiquitous. They're myriad, innumerable viruses. Yeah. We can't have a global pandemic crisis on an annual basis. Right. Like virus is some sort of unusual thing. Right. Right. We need a new way of looking at it. And I'm starting to see some of those messages come out. Great. And I think while it's caused a lot of chaos and maybe devastation to get there, I think something wonderful is going to come out of that fire. Yeah. Yeah, something needed to happen, the wake up call. Yeah, so exactly. One of the things that I'm super curious about is, and I just sort of have a mental gut instinct on this, this return to regionalism and even a regional immune system, like this concept of a regional immune system. I love the book An Elegant Defense, and where he, I can't remember the author's name, but he talks about it's all about the immune system and the history of immune system science, right? And he talks about you're actually the 5-second rule when you drop food on the floor and you pick it up, you're gonna have a stronger immune system. You're getting more exposure to germ and microbes. Petting your dog and then picking your nose, thumbs up. Eating your snot, even thumbs up, getting involved, creating even within a family system instead of disinfecting from each other. Actually, it's great when we hug and kiss each other and get a little saliva around here. And this is how it's meant to be. It's okay that your dog just sniffed the other dog's butt, came home and started kissing you. That's how we create a strong immune system. So in the pandemic here, I was talking with this gal who runs the little local Teton family magazine. And I started talking about this regional immune system on this podcast. The podcast was all about I think I called it something about how to thrive in a planetary pandemic. And I mentioned this thing about regional immune system. She's like, write an article on it. And I started outlining the article, and I'm like, in our body, if everything's interconnected and we treat our body as a region, if we increase interconnectivity in our body and treat it as one organism, we get healthier. So in the where I live in the Tetons, and during the pandemic, I started noticing more of this return, a little bit more of a return to regionalism. Right? People are doing, first, with the quarantine, there was that. But even now that where I am, we're a bit past that. People are doing staycations. They're hanging out with their neighbors more. The kids are playing in the streets more. The kids are not going away to camp, but they're here and they're exchanging germs. So we're getting a stronger, in my experience, like I think we're getting a stronger regional immune system. And I think it ties into the economy where things that were with the shipping transportation issues that were disrupted with the pandemic and with certain industries shutting down, people started to source more things, including food, more locally, more value added products locally, more of a connection of like, where can I get this within an hour or two drive instead of this thing needing to get shipped across the country. And my thought is, with everyone, not everyone, but a lot of people running, like you were saying, what did you call it? The go and do? Yeah, go and do.
Yeah.
Right. With that, and people just, I need to take a vacation and get on an airplane and travel 3,000 miles all of this, massive carbon footprint unconsciously created by that intensity of response. And now seeing a lot of people just exhaling, having time to take a walk with their neighbors, having time in that walk to actually and I saw it today. My neighbor saw me in the park this morning. Let's take a walk. She pets my dog. She touches her face, right? Like this is how a regional immune system is built, is actually through contact and connectivity. So yeah, I'd love to hear your thoughts on that, especially before I write the article, because I'll probably quote you in it. You'll be helping me out.
Yeah, no, I couldn't agree. I couldn't agree anymore. I think we talk a lot at SAFM about, coming back to the truth of how the human body is constructed, because I think I could make a really good argument about, who's the host. Is it us or is it the microbiome? Because there is literally a planetary level world, both in terms of population and diversity in the gut. And when you learn more about who's really in charge in the body and the impact of microbial DNA and microbial secretions and, triggering the release of neuropeptides that inform the brain and that change physiological functioning totally across systems, you can make a really good argument that the microbes are in charge. And the microbes are interested in being in contact with the mothership. And so, and I like talking about things this way because it's the way you can talk to your patients and it will make sense to them, right? To your point, we've moved to the place through our intelligence and technologies and advancement and all this kind of stuff where we've got lots of separation, lots of convenience, what I call, lots of plastic and technology and not nearly enough dirt and sweat and fresh air. We lose sight, Kate, of the fact that we are animals. It amazes me to look at, ask people, how would you define nature? What's your relationship to nature? Well, our default answer should be, oh my God, I'm part of it. I'm an animal just like everything else.
Yeah.
I am nature. And instead, nature has become this thing out the window that we go to, that we visit occasionally. And we're just fooling ourselves because, whether we like it or not, the body is still going to respond well or poorly based on how connected it is with the mothership, with the natural environment. And so I'm a big believer in what you're saying. Even research that looks at the nice, healthy, diverse microbiome of different people living, like in the blue zones around the world, right? Or in different places where there's still a strong honoring of natural rhythms, even in, a Western lifestyle. There are differences, really remarkable differences in microbial patterns, but it's still very rich. There's still a lot of diversity. And I think it's critically important. In fact, we know that the immune system—
cool in itself. I mean, what you do, I just want to highlight, which is cool in itself. So if we take the blue zones where the healthiest people live the longest, right? And what you're saying is that they all have diverse microbiomes, but the diversity of their microbiomes itself is diverse.
Yes,
That
exactly.
is such a cool key to understand. Yeah.
Well, for me, it's not any different than, I could go from a forest here in the mountain behind my house here in North Carolina, or I could go to Australia. And you know what? The flora and the fauna are different.
Yeah.
And if I transplant something from here and take it there, it might not do very well.
Yeah.
Right? Because it hasn't evolved and conditioned its own survival mechanisms based on that environment. Yeah. Well, if I want to thrive in the environment here, it's kind of like I'm going to left turn here, but children, right? Children need to be allowed to play in the dirt and to interact with animals. And 5-second roll, 10-second roll, right? I mean, we need to relax and realize that part of avoiding things like asthma and allergy and autoimmune disease is allowing our immune system to fully experience the reality of our normal world so it appropriately tolerates what is normal and safe and part of our environment. Mm-hmm. And then the immune system becomes much better at doing its primary job, which is to not fight. 99.99999% of the time, the immune system should be tolerating. Surveil and tolerate, surveil and tolerate, surveil and tolerate, and only react aggressively and incisively when it's really a threat.
Yeah.
Otherwise, tolerate.
Yeah.
And it's like saying, the plants around the house here, if I put it in a pot and bring it outside and expose it to a lot of toxic air and poor light and a non-natural environment, I disconnect it from its mothership, it's going to die in that pot because it's not adapted to the environment. And I think we've got to get back to seeing ourselves as needing that same connection. Yeah. So I'm a big believer of what you're explaining. And I think the science is showing it to us clearly with regard to resiliency for a number of different diseases. Yeah.
Yeah. I love what you said about rewilding the self and I'm glad you're bringing up allergies, why are we one of the things I ask people is why are you reacting? Why is your physiology reacting to your environment? Why?
Because it feels threatened. It feels threatened. Your immune system is like, oh my gosh, we have been raised on refined food and toxins and technology and separation. And now you're exposing me to something and I'm already freaked out. I'm already predisposed to be hypervigilant. Yeah. So I'm going to be hypervigilant to as much as possible because again, the body is not interested in you thriving until it knows your survival is assured. Yeah. And if it does not think your survival is assured, it's going to react to a lot of things.
Yeah. It's in reactive mode. So it can only react.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And no amount of sedatives is going to address that. Yeah. Because the body in its wisdom is going to protect us. And instead of fighting that, we have an opportunity to come back to celebrating that and honoring it. And it's like we're paddling upstream. Yeah. Turn the flipping boat around and go with the natural rhythm.
Yeah. Yeah. And I always find that the good solutions are free.
Oh my gosh. Isn't that true? Isn't that true? Yes. Air and dirt and grass, and relaxation, dozing, joy, sunshine, flowers. I mean, all of these things that are readily available. Yeah. We tend to bypass those. Yeah. It's like people, using a car in order to drive in the hilly terrain to get to the gym so they can get on a Stairmaster.
Totally. Oh, well, Tracy, this has been an absolute blast. I'd love to keep talking with you, but I know that. And so everyone, this is Tracy Harrison from the School of Applied Functional Medicine. I would just love to schedule the next one. Really a pleasure to be with you.
Yeah, you too. Thank you so much for your time. And thanks for the opportunity to chat.